Yeah.
Right.
Cranberry works pretty good for seasickness.
What?
It's the cranberries, isn't it, Ron?
Sharon, comma, what was the shot that I got on the cruise for seasickness? Question mark. She'll know.
So, that cranberry
I'll tell you what,
juice
it took
makes
me
you sick.
right out and took care of the seasickness.
Oh, Fenton.
Fenton.
Yeah.
No.
Promethazine.
I think you're right.
Yeah, that's a nausea that sounds like Zofran's another one.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, it was,
Who's gonna give you a shot of that?
That's all right.
You gotta give it a little slow.
all I remember is I was in a tuxedo, the waves were doing this, books were falling off the bookshelf.
Oh, yeah.
She came in, it was a nurse, and she said, I have to give this to you, and I just said, there you go right ahead.
You know what, why I'm good at seasickness is because I've ridden sideways in an ambulance for all the years. Looking this way when the cars
Go
went
down
down.
at night.
Never thought of that.
Yeah.
Friday morning.
Yeah, no windows, no light, just
Finish the job.
Do we hear from
sideways, 7:30.
Kate, I think Kate, so
But I mean, dude, it
he may just be.
Well, yeah.
So I went to
One
emergency
second.
room. They like, it's either.
Well, he's almost a lawyer, so.
I was gonna say, he's late all the time.
I didn't have my weight count normal, so it's not
We're another 1 minute. Mark, I think you're right.
What's that?
That sounds so familiar.
Yeah, there's a few of them.
Right.
Busy crowd tonight. Welcome, everyone. Give about another 30 seconds.
So 2 houses with their Christmas decorations up.
Yeah,
How do I?
Before Halloween?
yeah.
2 houses, one's on, Ralston just east of me, and the other one's right at north or Laring and Torrey.
But not turned on.
Yeah, they're on.
Yeah, they have,
Are you sure they're not Halloween lights?
oh, no.
Well, they got a
They got
roof
them
above
around
the
their
garage
Christmas
with
tree.
Christmas bulbs on it.
Should be an ordinance on that.
If they're in the store, it's legal, in my opinion.
People are taking advantage of the nice
Gee,
weather.
Vince, you know how to.
That,
With the light
Pull this
bulb.
they need a little
Yes.
bit of happiness in their
Oh,
life.
I'm all
You
for
get it?
Christmas lights.
Me
I
too.
love it.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not the person to ask about computers. I know you have to plug them in sometimes.
Where are you?
Oh, absolutely.
No, this should be loaded right on your drive.
And whatever you
They
do.
were up when I was.
According to my daughter, don't get mad and just turn it off.
Okay, we lost it.
You know, we talked about that at the hospital too. A lot of the
Yeah, there you go.
body stuff is like, you know, that's what defibrillating the heart is.
There's other ones there.
You know, if it's being,
It's a reboot.
if it's just you turn it off and turn it back on. And hopefully it reboots, yeah.
Well, good evening, everyone. I apologize for starting late. We have a couple of members that are going to be present tonight, but I guess they're going to be late. It's now 7:33 p.m. and I'd like to call to order the Fenton Township Board meeting on this 18th day of October, 2021. I'd ask everyone to please stand for the opening prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Trustee Gopal, would you lead us, please?
Yes, sir, thank you. Lord, we're meeting here tonight to conduct matters of business. Guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon these activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. And as always, we thank you for being the source of our guidance tonight. Amen.
Amen.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As always, Mark, thank you.
Sir.
Clerk Krug, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Lorraine,
Present.
Reed,
Here.
Patrick is absent, Krug is present, Kessler,
Here.
Gopal.
Here.
and Tucker is absent. You have 5 members present.
All right, we do have a quorum. I'd also like to note for the record that our township attorney, Jack Belzer, and operations manager, Tom Broker, are also present. And additionally, the following township people are present. We have our zoning administrator, Mike Dean, is he present?
Yep.
All right. Our fire chief, Brian Bolts, and our township engineer, Alan Lawrence, or it looks like Melissa's. Is that you, Melissa?
Yep.
Yes. All right.
Yes, and Alan.
All right, Tom, will you detail the procedures for those attending tonight's virtual meeting?
Certainly. To members of the public attending tonight's meeting, in person or via Zoom, please be advised this meeting is being recorded to be shown on Public Access TV, Spectrum Channel 191. Recorded meetings are also posted on the Fenton Area Community Television YouTube channel. For those attending via Zoom, we ask that you keep your microphone muted until we reach portions of the meeting where the public comment is allowed, at which time further instruction will be given. For tonight's meeting, 2 proposed ordinances are being introduced, during which time public comment will be accepted. All other public comment will be accepted near the end of the meeting. Meeting materials are available for download on the township's website at www.fentontownship.org.
Thanks, Tom. All right, moving on to the first business in order is the approval of the agenda. Are there any requests to amend tonight's agenda? Hearing none, a motion is in order to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll
Have
make
a
that
motion?
motion.
All right.
Mr. Tucker's here.
All right, that motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Clerk Crew, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Krug votes yes. Patrick is absent. Kessler,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Gopel.
Yes.
Tucker.
What am I voting on?
The agenda.
Agenda.
Lorraine,
Yes.
motion passes.
Only there's a way to know what we were voting on.
Thanks, Bob. All right, moving on to the next business in order is the meeting minutes. Included in your packet are the minutes from the October 4th regular meeting and the October 11th workshop. Are there any corrections or requested revisions to these meeting minutes? All right, hearing none, the meeting minutes stand approved as presented. The next business in order is expenditures. Are there any questions from the board regarding any of the invoices that were in your packet? Hearing none, a motion is in order to approve the expenditures totaling $330,390.92 for payment.
So moved.
Support.
All right, the motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Clerk Krug, will you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Reed,
Yes.
Gopel.
Yes.
Tucker,
Yes.
Kessler,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Krug votes yes. Patrick is absent. Motion passes.
Thanks, Bob.
Yep.
All right, moving on to public hearings. We have none this evening. Then the next business order is reports. Tonight we have APM Mosquito Control, their annual report. Chuck Mullins from APM Mosquito Control is here this evening to review their annual report. Mr. Mullins will provide a brief overview of the 2021 program. I do want to tell you, Chuck, that I'm sure you had a difficult year from looking at your report. I kept scrolling and scrolling and scrolling.
Challenging year.
It was a challenging year, and looking forward to your report. Would you please, yeah, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chuck Mullins, the General Manager with APM Mosquito Control. I want to start out with this year, 2021. On June the 18th of this year, we were still 7 inches under and in drought conditions. On the 26th of June, we got almost 4 inches of rain. The goal then was to treat what we could, knowing that there's no way in heck you're gonna get it all done before they start popping, because the temperatures and the sporadic thunderstorms all through July and into August It was the beginning of the perfect storm. We had 3 main types of mosquitoes in Fenton Township this year. The Cochlearia perturbans, which is a very active biter that typically flies between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. And they come from cattails and phragmites. And those were in abundance on our 3-stop route. 3-stop, and that would have been at Mueller's Orchard. That's where that trap is, correct, Brian? Excuse me, folks. Brian Grammer's the manager for the South Division down here, and he's one that usually takes all your calls. And anyway, as we made it through the 4th of July relatively quiet. I mean, we had only had like, I don't know, maybe 60 calls for the year at that point. We ended the year at 1,287 calls for service in Fenton Township. And the Dollar Lake trap, that was our winner for the year. From May 27th or May 24th through September 15th, had almost 22 inches of rain. And it was like that all over the place, all throughout southeast Michigan. Largest Vexan hatches, which are the little tiny ones that you probably still see a few of them around even now. Fortunately, they have a short lifespan, 2 to 3 weeks typically. The problem is that female lays another 200 to 300 eggs every time she gets her blood bite, her blood meal, and completes the ovulation cycle. So from that first hatch that got into the air on the 9th of July, we had 7 additional broods come off of that original hatch. And I know that sounds pretty, I don't know, mundane, but what you're visualizing is several million mosquitoes at a time popping into the air. And then that produces 3-fold each brood cycle. So we were killing millions of mosquitoes, but there was just millions more coming. And it was a cycle that, I'll be flat honest with you, we couldn't keep up with. I brought guys and equipment down from our Gladwin division and our Augrey division to assist down here, and a typical situation is backpack treatments when you can't really get trucks in. I had trucks getting stuck in people's yards in the middle of the day trying to get in to spray them. And the ground was just so saturated, the water had nowhere to go. And we couldn't put trucks in people's yards. So a lot of our off-roads really suffered, and that in turn suffered our effectiveness for the whole community, because a lot of times we can get back into the trails and get into the wood lines where they're hanging out during the day and knock them out. So we had to do a lot of backpack work. And for the year, we did 1,005 barriers. That's unheard of. That's an ungodly number. But let me just try to bounce through the rest of it. Some of it we treated. I take it back. 1,007 barriers. We treated 615 acres of water by ground. We treated 728 acres by airplane. We treated 1,223 catch basins within the township. Now, we must have obviously added another subdivision or 2. 20 CDC traps, all of which tested negative. We have our lab has been upgraded to, we're now capable of testing for not only West Nile, but for EEE, Eastern Equine Encephalitis, and Jamestown Canyon encephalitis. And we are now recognized in where the state is actually using our lab facilities as well. They will send us samples and we'll run the tests for them. And so very, very proud of that evolution also in our company. There's a brief synopsis on pages 2 and 3, and I'll get to those real quick. But the bottom line is I ended up over budget this year, and that's first time in a long time. But I converted 626 barriers to ULV miles by taking the material, and there's a formula to convert that to gallons from the amount of liters, and then convert those gallons to one ULV application equals 3.1 miles. So you'll see a little spike at the end on that, but if I had not done that, I would be in here begging for almost $50,000 instead of 11. So we are going to eat all of that, just because that's the way, you know, our hands were at a point where we really couldn't do an effective job. And I discussed this with ownership before I put it together and tried to explain in detail to Tom. I hope we got through. But we pride ourselves in our integrity and getting a good job done for everyone. This year was a year that, you know, we couldn't keep up. It's that simple. There was just more coming into the air every day than we were knocking down the day before. But we first had larvae on the 29th of March, and that's when we started our spring larviciding. And it was actually really dry. It wasn't a lot of areas that were normally always underwater this year were dry this year in the springtime. So when we started getting those heavy rains in June, all of those eggs were hatching off with you. And so, like I said, as of June, we had 3.5 inches of rain on the 26th of June. Our overnight temps were staying in the 70s, daytime highs were in the high 80s, low 90s. That month of June, the Dollar Lake Trap recorded a total of 8.2 inches that month. Most of that coming after the 16th of June. So, July, like I told Tom in the report, the best word for July was almost insanity. Once that happened, once that started around the 10th, the phones were constantly ringing, and we had 3 girls in the office, managers in the offices, everything trying to keep up just with the input of calls. We had 368 calls for service in July. The truck spraying, like I said, was limited to driveways only for much of that month and well into the month of August, just because of the saturated ground. So when we can't take trucks there, we have to go with backpacks. And barriers are normally very effective, but when you have overwhelming numbers like we're having, you still got to get the ones that are airborne. And if you can't get the trucks to them, then it's a losing battle. Heavy thunderstorms continued into August. 581 calls that month. It's by far the busiest month that APM has ever had with Fenton Township, 30 years. We applied 369 barriers and sprayed 525 miles in August. The disease surveillance, last set of traps ran on the 27th. We ran a total of 20 for the year, and they were all negative for all 3 of the diseases that I spoke of earlier, West Nile, Eastern Equine, and Jamestown Canyon. Our peak high female count was 61 at the Sharp Road Trap on 825, and then back to single digits. So we could see that it was happening. You know, the male count was coming down, with each new brood, so that you knew that the cycle was starting to wane. September, which we normally are looking for fall weather right away after Labor Day, that didn't happen. We continued with high temps, lots of wind, which affects our abilities to spray in the evenings. You know, more than 10 miles an hour. Raining at the time of application, or typically around 55 degrees is when mosquitoes will just go harbor up, and you're not killing anything that's not flying. But we kept trucks available to take care of any annoyance calls after that through the 1st of October. Like I said, that was pretty much the extent of it. Like I said, we did, on your front page of your budget sheet, it's a breakdown, but if you go to the barrier tab, you'll see how I made the conversion and why I did what I did. And it would have been 191 without doing the conversion for you. So I'm here to take any questions you may have. Try to give you a satisfactory answers.
Chuck, I do appreciate, that was a very thorough report. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
One thing I wanted to point out is, as Mr. Mullins indicated, with the conversion he did, it knocked our over budget situation down to only about 11,800. By comparison, last year we were 11,000 under budget. We were about 7,000 under budget the year before. So
Yeah, we're historically always.
Cumulatively, we're still ahead of the game, even being over budget.
Like I said, every once in a while you have a year like this, and unfortunately it was this year. And, so we're always looking for good help too. If you got young lads out there that need a job, we are seeking. We'll be in the schools again this spring, and we can't have too many bodies, able-bodied bodies.
Even though I've been with the company for 23 years, and it's the worst mosquito year that I've ever experienced.
Yeah, it
The
is.
phrase that I started to use with the residents when they call in and say, it's horrible, I can't go outside, it's just so bad. And I remind them, imagine how bad it would be if you had zero mosquito control.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's.
Really brought it into perspective for them.
Well, APM has done an amazing job for us over the years,
Yep.
and this was an extremely difficult year, I'm sure, for your company. And
Yes.
for the residents. You can tell by the number of calls that you made, but I'm sure that our residents are happy that you are so responsive. I mean, when I looked at the list again this year, I just kept scrolling and scrolling how many residents had reached out, and
Yep.
you had in turn went out to their homes and
Yes, absolutely.
helped them.
Well, you know, our response time, we got behind, obviously. And normally 24 to 48 hours, we will have you taken care of. That's always been our goal. This year, we got as far as 8 days behind at times, and I apologize for that, but that's just sheer volume, and it happens. And
I certainly believe it wasn't anything that APM fell short on. It was just check one for the mosquitoes this year.
you got it, sir.
That's all we can do.
Absolutely.
Just one box check for the mosquitoes. We'll get them next year.
You got it.
All right.
All right.
Thank you very much, Chuck. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Any other questions from the board at all? Thank you again for the very thorough report. I appreciate it. Right down to the genus species. That was just kind of way over my head. All right. Next is the fire department third quarter report. Chief is not with us tonight. He's doing some continuing education.
He's on Zoom.
But he's on Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, he's on Zoom. He's also going to talk about a new reporting format. Chief Volz, will you bring us up to date, please?
So as you can see by the new form that I have, we have located our our programming, and it kind of gives you more of a breakdown by the, you know, the building fire, the vehicle fire, so on and so forth, and the percentage for the month of the alarms. So for the third quarter report, we had 195 alarms, 27 types of incidents of those 195 alarms. We had 3 building fires, 2 passenger vehicle fires, dumpster fire, 42 medicals, 1 emergency medical service, 30 calls, 3 crashes, 1 extrication, 5 carbon monoxide incidents, 6 power lines down, and the Army Authority electrical equipment that also falls under the power line, so it's a total of 16. The bomb removal was out on Hogan Road that one of the fire mailbox blew it up. 1 person in distress, 3 smoke and odor removals, and assist the police had 6 of them. 1 public service, 8 unauthorized burnings, so open burns, 35 dispatch and canceled remote. 6 of them we had no incidents found, we got on arrival. 1 authorized controlled burning. Smoke scare, we had 2 of those. Smoke detectors 3. CO detectors 1. Detector activation, which also falls under the smoke detectors, of 6. Let's see, carbon monoxide with no steel were 7. 1 storm call and 1 lightning strike. So of those 195, 24 of them were in Fenton Township, 11 types of incidents. We had 1 building fire, 1 car fire, 6 medical assists, 5 EMS calls, 2 power lines down, and again, the arc and shorting also runs with power lines. Unauthorized burning 2, dispatch and canceled 2, no incident on 1, CO detector 1, and carbon monoxide detector with no CO2. So it was a pretty busy month for the third quarter, and we're starting to pick up because of the relief assist and a lot of the other things that we're running on with the ambulance and all that. And they're calling out the first responders to try and take care of some of the things. So that's pretty much the report for the third quarter.
Chief, appreciate the report. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, Chief, I do appreciate you coming on. From what I understand, you have a 4-hour written exam tonight, so you'll be.
Actually, we just did that. I did that. I got in late. Actually, I got it 2 hours and passed it.
I was just kidding.
No, I'm serious. So we got class tomorrow, and we've got we're re-electing a new officer tomorrow as well. So it'll be a busy afternoon tomorrow.
Well, I'm glad to report that you're doing continuing education, so I appreciate it, and thank you again for the report.
Thank you, and you're welcome.
All right, moving on, ordinance enforcement third quarter report. I'm sure all of you had a chance to review the report in the packet. I don't think there's anything that jumps out at me, so is there any questions from the board at this time? All right.
I would, just if I could, I'd advise the board that Pat Shaw is really doing a fantastic job getting things done. I mean, I've heard from a couple residents, and I know my dealings with them. He comes out to court on the Fridays when I'm there, and does a great job with all that.
Thank you, and I would certainly give affirmation to that. I meet with him at least every other day. We have a conversation, and he is doing a great job. So he's out a lot, and he's certainly doing the job if you look at the report. So, all right, moving on. Are there any committee reports to be made to the board this evening? All right, hearing none, the next business order is communications, of which we have none. Moving on to adoption of ordinances. Tonight we have proposed littering ordinance. This is the introduction and first reading. Our township attorney, Jack Belzer, will you please review?
Sure. We've had some problems with papers or different things that are just thrown in people's yards. They don't ask for it. They just get thrown in their yards, their driveways, not in any container. And so what happens is these papers blow around, and Mr. Tucker brought it up to me how he's had a number of people that have problems about that. I did talk to the Flint Journal. The distribution department said, well, if somebody doesn't want it, they can call in and opt out. Basically what this ordinance does, it makes everybody opt in if they want it. So if this ordinance passes, in order for somebody to get these free papers that are thrown in the driveway, they need to opt in. And ideally, there has been some communities that I'm aware of where they put up boxes. And you know, it's not, they can't put it in the mailbox, but it's another box on the mail post where the delivery fellow can stick it in that box and it doesn't blow around the neighborhood. And there is some gentleman, I guess, that goes around the township cleaning up papers and doing stuff, and that's real great, but that shouldn't be. So that's what that ordinance is. Be glad to answer any questions.
I can piggyback on the back of that. Mark Johnson's who he is referring to, and Mark is out. It's just astounding to me how much time he spends picking up junk. And you'll find him on the freeway on North Road, but I know he's been on Silver Lake. The man is a community asset and a braver, stronger warrior than I am. He was the one that asked me to pursue something along these lines. And of course, I wasn't clever enough to ask him to come here tonight. So I'm going to ask the supervisor for leeway when he comes. I'm going to invite him to the next one so he can tell you from his perspective what it's like. Since I've had those discussions with both him and Jack, I will tell you a little story, and I'll try and keep it brief. I was coming home from work, I think it was like October 1st. It was a Thursday night, whatever it was, getting dark. And I was coming down Torrey Road, and at Thompson Road, I got behind whoever it is that is delivering these things, okay? And I followed them from Thompson Road down to Laring Road, which is where I turned. And they had two people in the vehicle. One was the passenger side, one is the driver's side. And they were pitching them out the windows on both sides of the vehicle. Now, the person on the passenger side had the easier job, right? Not driving, right? No oncoming traffic. Probably scored about 80% hits on the driveway. It was pretty good. I mean, for whatever occasional miss, if they'd miss one, they would throw two at the next one. Okay?
Sort of blow down.
So the goal isn't to get them to people, the goal is to get them out of the car. Okay?
Yeah.
Whoever was driving, and again, a much tougher job, maybe 50% of them made it to the driveway. They were in the road, they were in the ditch, they were off cars that were coming from the other direction. It didn't matter, they were chucking them. And I'm watching this transpire and I'm thinking, why on earth would we ever allow anybody to do that? If I went through a subdivision with Gopal for president stuff, I get hung out for driving for other reasons, but clearly the littering stuff. So I do really think there's something to this, and I appreciate Jack jumping in. The only change that I would suggest is in section 3, where it says without the consent of whoever it is. I would say written consent. So just for enforcement purposes, we don't have an argument about so-and-so told me I could or whatever. You don't get a he said, she said. Show me the writing where this person says, I would like this delivered.
I would like you to let it.
So, but other than that, I wish you could have all seen it. I mean, it was very eye-opening to me, and it's been going on for a long time.
Get the flight?
I didn't. I'm sure they could tell me who it is, but yeah, right now there's nothing to chase them with. You know, because Mark is aware of the opt-out thing. He's very active on social media, and he's telling people. I was one of the people that called. I do believe they've stopped dropping them, but you know, that's 3% or 5%. You know, the other 95% are rolling around in the right of ways. Fred had a question.
Just a point of order on this thing. I was under the understanding that any newspapers that were delivered were delivered via subscription, not via, I mean.
These aren't newspapers.
Ads, inserts.
Oh, okay, I
It's
guess
just
I
the
haven't-
ads.
I guess I haven't had that happen around our place. Tri-County Times, they put up a little box and, they stick it in the box, and the Flint Journal is the same way. If they're gonna toss it, it's because you asked for it and paid for it.
And
And
well,
so
what-
you're saying that there's advertising stuff that's tossed out?
Regularly.
That's all it is.
Regularly.
I must be living in a good area.
You're probably living on a dead end, are you? Normally, they don't bother going down the little roads where it takes them too much effort to negotiate. They'll just try to hit the, like John said, the main, they're getting paid to get it out of the car.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Well, I guess as a retired sheriff, all I would have to say is that I'm always looking for somebody looking at a phone. But if I saw somebody throwing something up the driver's side, I certainly would feel that that's a little illegal. I mean, that's a little distracting to the driver.
Well, let's be real, it's about money. They don't wanna pay for postage. So the drivers they're paying are only interested in getting them out the window. There's no correlation with how they're actually delivered, so it's a dollar thing,
And it's
they're-
illegal to
they're-
be in a mailbox.
Right, you
Put it in
can't
the
put it in the mailbox, which is why you have the separate boxes that Mark was talking about. But, they're choosing to litter our township rather than spend money to have things properly delivered, because all they wanna do is tell the advertisers, we've got a circulation of X. And, of those X, how many ever actually make it to the people that they're supposed to be circulating? That part never gets relayed.
Well, not to continue the conversation, but have we drafted within this language, or can we draft within this language, people that are hammering up on telephone poles, sticking signs on,
It's broad enough.
And is it broad enough
Jack
to
didn't
cover?
narrow it down to just this specific issue. I don't know where he got his stuff from, because there's a lot of definitional stuff in here that he's dragged into it, but it covers the gambit of things that you would have distributed. The one that we're talking about is just an example of it, so yeah.
But, I mean, you can see like every fall, every spring,
Yep.
if you're up at Beacon and Ridge, you'll see, 4 or 5 signs that say, do you want your boat wrapped or something like that. So does that address that?
So that's not littering, that'd be a
Yeah,
sign
yeah,
ordinance.
it's a sign
ordinance.
Okay, all right, well, okay.
Hey, John, next time you see him, could you get some for him?
Yeah.
Make sure they stop by his
Yeah,
house.
stop by.
Fred wants some.
Fred wants some.
I'm gonna see if I'm missing out on some.
He's
good
he's
deals
missing
here.
on some
I'm
good
just gonna hook
deals.
him up with Mark, because Mark has several copies, as it turns out.
All right. Since this is the introduction and the first reading, I'll now open it up for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on the proposed littering ordinance? Yes, Fred?
Can we do anything about the neighbor that keeps littering in his yard and running a junkyard out there?
I don't know, Jack Cameron.
Is this included in that?
Well, there's things we can do with that already. I mean, have you talked to Pat Shaw?
Vince, you and I have talked about it before, you know who I'm talking about. It's just an ever-going on Swanee Beach, it's an ever-going junkyard. The guy's a collector, he collects stuff and distributes it, drives it out to the junkyard, I guess. It's just really kind of annoying. It'll go away and then it comes back. But if that doesn't
Well,
have anything to do
yeah,
with this.
what you should do is talk to Mr. Shaw.
Yep.
All right.
Call
I'll just call the
and
Vince,
ask,
he can talk.
hit the front desk, ask for Julie, and then she'll turn you over to you.
Carry on.
Pat. All right. Is there anybody on Zoom that would like to speak to the littering ordinance? There's no more. All right, just to let you know that the second reading and the vote on the adoption for the proposed ordinance will be conducted on our November 1st meeting. Next, under adoption of ordinances, the proposed zoning ordinance amendment, fuel tanks. This is the introduction and the first reading. Our zoning administrator, Mike Deem, I'm sure, yes, he's still on Zoom. Will you review, please?
Sure. So recently the planning commission received a request for a fueling tank at the Lake Lima Marina. And going through the ordinance, it was identified that there's a deficiency in the ordinance in that the fueling tank aspect of the marina did not require a special use for it, right? It's part of a permitted use. And the planning commission, and I agree with this, thought that that was inappropriate. That fueling is, especially for ladies, there's a lot that could go wrong, that planning commission should have tighter control over that type of use. So what we did is we prepared this draft ordinance for you. And what this does is first it requires that storage tanks would become a special land use permit. And that is regardless of what other additional uses may be happening on the site. They have to have a specific special use permit for the storage tank. That would deal with issues like the marinas, which is a permitted use in the C2 zoning district. But under the definition, it also mentions fueling as part of the marina activities. And so by requiring a special use permit, we will let the public know that, there's potential for a tank going in this location. And we have the ability to see comments on that. So there are regulations in here that are based off the Michigan Flammable Liquid and Combustible Liquid rules. And what that does is provide setbacks from property lines. So a storage tank cannot be less than 50 feet from the property line. Provides setbacks from water and wetlands, also 50 feet. Setbacks from congregation of people, that is 100 feet. And then we also place a specific regulation for marinas, which states that, a commercial fueling of marine vehicles or a marina shall be performed by employees of the marina. And so what that's intended to do is that if someone's fueling up their boat, it's being done by an employee. It's not someone who's just careless and filling up cans and taking the boat. So we have a little bit more control over how the fuel is being dispensed. And then we also have to require some additional safety information for the tank itself, talking about requiring a secondary containment unit, and then providing the appropriate information so we know who to contact in case of emergency, what their emergency plans are, and the name and number of people on site in case there is a detected spill. So the planning commission has reviewed this, and John, I'm sure will have some additional information to add, but the recommendation is to approve the draft ordinance.
Treasurer Tucker?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot additional. Mike summed it up very well. Frankly, I was appalled that we didn't have more stringent restrictions when this application came rolling through, and they weren't as clear as they might have been. But the beauty of this, I mean, it gives regulation, it requires secondary containment. When this application came in, it was, we want to put a 500-gallon tank up. We're gonna, put it up on some cinder blocks, and we're gonna go. That's what it looked like. So it clearly is an area that needed more specificity than what we had. There was some conflict in the ordinance because, I had to dive into the automobile servicing center definitions that arguably picked this up as well. So this will make it clear wherever you're putting gasoline in this township, we've got to get a special use permit. You got to have secondary containment. That's I think two admirable things that we don't have right now.
I agree, thanks. All right, since this is the first reading, I'll now open it up for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on the proposed fuel tank ordinance? Yes, sir. Would you mind coming up and coming to the podium and just give us your first and last name, please?
Don McKeon. How does this affect farmers?
Help me out, Mike.
Yeah, so if they're farming under the Right Farm Act, then they are following those rules, which would allow the usage of storage tanks.
So the GAMP superseded?
Correct.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
I'll look at the written ordinance in more detail.
Well, what he's saying though is that the rules and regulations that govern farmers will control the fuel tank, not the ordinance. So So if you wanna know what's gonna happen to farmers, you need to look at the GAMS, not the ordinance.
Okay.
Ordinance isn't gonna affect it.
Okay.
Good question.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
very good
Excellent
question.
question. I wondered,
Stopped me right in my tracks, I went,
Me too.
all right.
Would there be any places that are doing this that would be grandfathered in?
Right, what's the impact on existing?
This is,
We have two now, right?
Yes.
right, this is a zoning amendment, so anything that's in place beforehand is grandfathered in, subject to the usual, grandfathering rules. So it's not a police power ordinance, we can't just go out and start, enforcing against people who've been here for a long time.
Any other board comment? Is there anybody that is joined us on Zoom that has any questions? If there's no more questions from the board, the second reading and the vote on the adoption for the proposed ordinance will be conducted at our November 1st meeting. All right, the next business in order is unfinished business, of which we have none. I'm moving on to new business. This is a proposed miscellaneous special assessment 2021 property tax roll. Operations Manager Broker, will you please explain?
Yes, included in the packet is a list that we approve every year. It's, the main purpose of it is the perpetual special assessment districts. We have private road maintenance and street lighting. We also list, just for reference, the general operating millage, which will be formally approved when we adopt our budget. Also noting that mosquito control, as we discussed previously, there'll be no assessment this year. We'll use reserves to cover next year's contract. Solid waste remains at 180. Fire's already been confirmed at 65 per parcel. The rest of them are the private road maintenance, which are a combination of, as requested by the property owners, or just a base amount that doesn't change year to year, so they have money available for maintenance, snow plowing, and routine improvements. And the street lighting is based on actual billings from Consumers Energy. That's our largest group of special assessments, and they are adjusted every year to match up with actual.
All right, thanks, Tom. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I've gotta ask, it's been driving me wild. Where is Hicks Haven?
It's a little private dead-end street off of North Long Lake Road.
Across from the school.
No, it's, you think of Moffett Court.
Yeah, that's Moffett.
Hicks Haven it's on the, south side of North Long Lake Road as you're heading toward Fenton Road. You almost miss it. It's just a little private drive. There's like 3 or 4 homes in there.
I'd never heard of it. That was.
Well, on that note, another one. Not all private drives are listed on here, correct?
Ones with special assessments.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? All right, hearing none, I need a motion to approve special assessments for the 2021 winter property tax roll as presented.
So moved.
Support.
All right, motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Clerk Krug, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Patrick is absent. Kessler,
Yes.
Krug votes yes. Gopel.
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, next under new business is the proposed amendments to the 2021 Fenton Township budget. And our operations manager, will you please review?
Yes, I've included all funds in the proposed amendment, even though we're proposing to amend only 3 of them: the general fund, mosquito fund, and sewer fund. But the reason I included all of them is we recently went through a software conversion, and a number of our account numbers changed. And I thought, just as a safety precaution, we'll just readopt the whole budget that would include all those number changes. Our general ledger is brought into compliance with the new and improved uniform chart of accounts from the state of Michigan. A number of our accounts had to switch numbers to come into compliance. So I'll highlight just a couple of things. In the general fund, we're looking at a projected increase to the bottom line of about $78,000, due primarily to projected increase in our revenue sharing from the state of Michigan. In the mosquito fund, as we already heard, we are 11,800 over budget, so we've increased that budget by 12. And in the sewer fund, the one item that has gone over budget is emergency calls, and that is due to the large number of power outages we've had this year and significant rain events. But overall, the funds are still projecting positive numbers across the board.
Thanks, Tom. And again, Tom, just to make note for the public, that the chart of accounts have changed, the numbers have changed, but none of the balances have changed.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to
The other
clarify
funds,
for the-
other than those three funds I mentioned, we're not changing, we're not amending the budget on any of them.
Correct.
But they're all presented because so many of the numbers have changed.
Thanks, Tom. Are there any questions or comments from the board? All right, hearing none, I need a motion to adopt amendments to the 2021 Fenton Township budget as presented.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further questions? Clerk Krug, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Kessler.
Yes.
Krug votes yes. Reed.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Patrick is absent. Tucker.
Yes.
Gopel.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thanks, Bob. All right, next under new business is resolution number 2021-35. This is a memorial for former Township Supervisor James Smeets. We recently learned that former Fenton Township Supervisor Jim Smeets passed away last month. Mr. Smeets served on the Township Board for nearly 2 decades and was instrumental in the implementation of programs that are still in place today. A memorial resolution has been prepared to honor Mr. Smeets for his years of service to Fenton Township. Resolution number 2021-35. Clerk Krug, will you please present the resolution?
Yes, thank you. Whereas former Fenton Township Supervisor James S. Smeets passed away on September 11, 2021, and whereas Mr. Smeets was a longtime resident of Fenton Town, during which time he contributed greatly to the progress and welfare of the community, most notably as Fenton Township Supervisor and Trustee. Whereas Mr. Smeets led Fenton Township through a period of growth and transition in the 70s and 80s, and was driving force behind many initiatives that still benefit Township residents today, including construction of the township-wide sanitary sewer system, contracting law enforcement services through Genesee County Sheriff, creation of the Fenton Township Fire Department, implementation of a township-wide trash collection, implementation of a township-wide mosquito control, negotiation of the first cable television franchise agreement, construction of the new township hall in 1974. And whereas Mr. Smeets served loyally and faithfully as a township supervisor from November 1970 to November 1988, and as a township trustee from 1989 to March 1990, exhibiting the qualities of vision, liberty, leadership, and dedication throughout his 19 years of service. Now therefore be it resolved that the Fenton Township Board of the Chartered Township of Fenton hereby honors James S. Smeets for his valuable contributions to our community, conveys sincere appreciation and gratitude for his dedicated service to the government and citizens of Fenton Township, and expresses profound sadness at his passing. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread upon the minutes of the meeting, and a copy be given to Mr. Smeets' family. And be it further resolved, nope, we've got it all, I'll move the resolution.
Support. Motion's been moved and supported. Bob, I want to thank you for reading that in its
No problem.
entirety. Is there any further discussion?
What an impressive list of accomplishments.
Yep.
He started 50 years ago. What a testament to his foresight. 50 years when he started, every single one of those things is still in play, and we rely on it day to day. That man and his family should be proud. What an accomplishment.
Absolutely.
Ironically, we almost talked about every one of them tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
We did.
And that's the point. I mean,
We had a report on most of them.
That's right.
Is Vince measuring up?
No.
Well, he's only in year one. This dude had a little longer than that.
You got 19 to go.
Any further discussion at all? Any of the board members? All right, Clerk Carug, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Gopal?
Yes.
Tucker?
Yes.
Lorraine?
Yes.
Patrick is absent. Krug votes yes. Reed?
Yes.
Kessler?
Yes.
Resolution passes.
Thanks, Bob. And again, thanks for reading that in its entirety. I appreciate it. Next business in order is board comment. Is there anyone on the board who has additional comments or concerns? No questions from the board? All right. We'll move on to public comment on agenda and non-agenda items. We will now open up the meeting for public comment on agenda or non-agenda items. First, is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board? All right, hearing none, we will move to Zoom. Is there anybody who is attending this meeting tonight via Zoom that would like to address the board on agenda or non-agenda items? All right, hearing none, if there's no other public comment, it is now 8:26 p.m. If there's nothing else, I say good night and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
How about them Blue Devils?